Hey, what's up? I'm Brandon, better known as the Had Not, and I'm here to talk about Christopher Nolan's latest release, Oppenheimer. Welcome to my channel. Oppenheimer is written and directed by Christopher Nolan. Alongside Christopher Nolan are writers Kai Bird and Martin Sherwin. There are plenty of amazing actors in this film, including Cillian Murphy, Emily Blunt, Matt Damon, Robert Downey Jr., and a plethora of others. I'm a huge Christopher Nolan fan, and always have been. I mean, we've got Interstellar, which is my top favorite film of all time, I think. Man of Steel, The Dark Knight, Memento, Inception. It just seems like the guy doesn't miss. And I know that he's not everybody's cup of tea, but I definitely have always enjoyed his films for the immersive experience based on all of the effort that has to do with his cast, his crew, his direction style, his writing, his brother's writing, as well as anybody else's writing that he brings onto his projects. I really appreciate that he tries to do a lot of things in camera, and that for the most part, he is really passionate about telling stories that people want to go to the movies to experience. Oppenheimer sets itself apart from, I think, every other film that Christopher Nolan has made to date, particularly because of some of its more adult themes. I don't think that there's any other film that Christopher Nolan has made where there's an actual sex scene in it, and multiple, showing nudity, that is. I know that even in the Dark Knight Rises, Marion Cotillard and Christian Bale have a scene in front of the fireplace, but it's really like deliberately PG-13-ish kind of scene, whereas in Oppenheimer, it's there. If you're unfamiliar with my movie reviews, typically I write them out, but I wanted to try something new with shooting this video and just sharing my thoughts in sort of a free-form kind of way. Hopefully they're as clear and maybe even exciting and detailed as my writing is, but I'm trying something new here because it's a little hard sometimes to just sit down and write it all out and make sure everything is revised and nice and neat and clean before I put it out there on Facebook or a blog or something. So let me know in the comments if this is something that you like, especially if you're somebody who's read my reviews before. I'm also on, I'm forgetting the name of this app. Let me look it up real quick. Letterboxd. I'm also on Letterboxd as the Had Not. I try to keep the same handle across all social media so that you guys can find me. But enough about me, let's talk about this movie and Christopher Nolan's work in it. This film is nothing short of amazing. It definitely fulfills that spectacle that is created from the trailer that came out, along with all the coverage of the movie. There's just all of this mystery and this buildup of how he did this or that. Nolan is a director who's known mostly for trying to capture things in camera, to produce the most immersive experience for you as the viewer as possible, making you want to come to the theater and see it on the biggest possible screen with the best sound. Not only that, but his most commonly used cinematographer is Hoyt van Hoytema, who also shares the same goal of wanting to capture things in camera so that you feel like there's a sense of realism. I think my favorite thing about Oppenheimer is the music. The music, definitely. Ludwig Göransson, once again, produces yet another masterpiece out of his talented brain. Subjective entry is one of the things that Oppenheimer does best. As we're following sort of over the shoulder of Robert J. Oppenheimer throughout the film, we notice that when he's there on screen, a lot of the time, everything is in color. Oftentimes when he's not, it's in black and white. And through subjective entry, we know when he's feeling anxiety. They use things like sound, rumbling of objects in the background. You sort of just realize something that is happening behind him. Almost like everything that he did with the bomb. After he got done helping build it, it was behind him. And the long-lasting effects are what he seemed to be afraid of. After the first time he achieves his greatest work, he starts to have these moments where somebody's talking and he sort of phases out, and there are these bright lights after this rumbling, and you will almost always expect a bang to follow. I think that that's done really well in a way that I can say without, I guess, ruining the experience, because I personally feel like you honestly can't really spoil a movie that's kind of based on history, but I just try to keep my review spoiler free. So for those of you who maybe don't know anything about Oppenheimer and the atomic bomb and the things that we did to Japan, then I'll keep the details nice and broad for you. As for the performances, this film is full of just greatness. When you've got a film that's not all action packed and it's full of dialogue, and really the main thing that you can rely on is the spectacle. The performances gotta hold a lot of weight. Cillian Murphy, this is probably the best performance of his career, and that man can act. Like, he can act. To carry your own weight across from actors like Robert Downey Jr., Emily Blunt, all these other, big actors as well. I mean, you got Florence Pugh in there. She did amazing. She, has done something in this role that I don't think I've ever seen her do. And for, I guess, her to have been made to be comfortable in that role and, leave with sort of a powerhouse performance still emotionally, I think that deserves its props. Another thing that I wanted to bring up is I don't think that enough people are talking about just how incredible an actor that Benny Safdie is. The first time I ever saw him was in the film Good Times with Robert Pattinson. He played his brother, I think, in the film, and he acted so well. I thought that he was actually like that. I thought that he was on the spectrum or had some condition. I haven't seen the movie in a while, so I can't really remember the fine details. But he had me convinced. And then he popped up in another movie and another, and now he's in Oppenheimer as Edward Teller, who is somebody who tried to consult with Oppenheimer on hydrogen, or the use of a hydrogen bomb versus an atomic bomb. So kudos to him. He did amazing. Yeah, man. I'm really excited to see Benny Safdie in more things. He's great. Like I said, there are a ton of familiar faces in this movie. Just not black ones. It's kind of nice to shift the perspective a little bit and show what people of color and black people were doing in this time, because we existed. Just saying. There's one or two folks in that film who are but hey, I'm not mad. I'm just saying. I mean, fun fact, Home Alone, the only black person in that movie is the Michael Jordan cutout. Anyway, great movie. Speaking of black characters or black people and everything, and sort of our relation to cinema and just these emotional stories that we are involved in just naturally. We're a part of it. We're connected to it. Christopher Nolan has done a bunch of movies where black characters are sort of front and center. I mean, Tenet is one of my favorite movies from him as well. But I'm not just here to talk about that. Sort of my emotional requirement of seeing myself in a movie through a character by just making a movie that looks how the world looks. And I know how things might have looked back then. But I just want to drive a point home before I end all of this by saying that if you want to make a film about a man who's supposedly the most important man in all human history, the American Prometheus, I think you also have to be bold enough to actually show what happened to the people who suffered the effects of the thing that he made. The film dwells on whether or not he can forgive himself or be kind to himself, or whether history will be kind to him, or if we will be kind to him in memory for what he is not solely responsible for, but he's coined as the father of the atomic bomb. And if you haven't looked up what happened to Japan, specifically Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the people, and the full list of casualties because of what the United States dropped on them twice, then you never forget once you see it. That's why I think it's so important, because when it comes to black characters or black people or black tragedies, one pattern that I've noticed as a black movie lover is that whenever it's us, there's sort of this direct exposure to the pain and the trauma. Even if it's us that's directing the movie, we sort of force you to see, to look at it, because you need to see. Take the movie Till, for example, about Emmett Till and what happened to him. You watch that movie and you see what happened to that boy. You feel all of that pain and the shock through the horrors of what actual people did to this actual person who existed. And while not everyone can stomach that sort of thing, I do think that it is deeply necessary in a movie like Oppenheimer. Otherwise, we end up sort of romanticizing what happened. We might even glorify what happened. And hey, to each their own. You know, there's the whole discussion of, hey, if this country had an atomic bomb, then they would use it on us. So we have to use it first, or else we could get wiped off of the map. I know that those discussions happen, and I'm not painting anybody as like the bad guy. I'm not saying you're a bad person if you feel a different way than I do. I'm just saying that as a black viewer, this is something that I pick up on. So with Oppenheimer, I wanted to know, I wanted to know if they were gonna go there and show the drop. And instead, it's a lot more subtle, but still harrowing. The dialogue that follows, the things that you hear, again, back to the subjective entry of what Oppenheimer himself starts to imagine and see as he's looking at the American people who are cheering. And you can sort of feel what he is afraid he might have just set in motion. That's why the film is great. While that is my critique, or that is my sort of takeaway that sort of like brings it down a notch compared to his other movies for me, with this film being more history based, I guess I wanted Christopher Nolan to make more bold choices. He made some, especially when it came to the sex scenes. But I expected to truly see and feel the shock and awe from the perspective of the people who saw an atomic bomb falling from the sky, if it was even possible to be seen, and what they felt versus, oh darn, Oppenheimer feels bad. You know, it's like, obviously he was a human being. And obviously he expressed his concerns. But is that enough? Is it enough to make the movie just all about him and what he felt, and maybe what the people around him felt about him and his decisions or his actions or his inactions, his relationships? Is it enough to do that? Does this movie need to take on moral responsibility of showing that trauma that the people of Japan experienced as sort of the America's solution to try to end the war and end attacks on U.S. soil? Who knows? These are the questions I asked myself as I was watching the movie. Those types of things, they can very easily get glossed over when it comes to historical context. And that's the one thing that sort of bothered me. And don't get me wrong, people say that there are horror aspects of this film or horror elements in this film because of the very things that I am talking about. They don't always show the monster in a horror film. They don't always show how ghoulish it is or even what it does to the people. And in this film, if the monster is the atomic bomb, then we don't get to see what it does to the people. We see flashes of what it could have done or what Oppenheimer imagines happened to them, because he's a very smart man. He can make the predictions on what happens when you drop something that turns into a big fiery ball on cities full of people, men, women, and children. So yeah, there it is. There's my review. And like I said, I'm happy with the movie. All of it comes together in such a masterful way that however you feel about this movie and what it did do or didn't, you almost have to respect all of the work that went into it. All of those things just really made this a film that I was really happy to have seen in a theater. After I left the theater, I felt a sense of, I don't know if this is being too dramatic, but a sense of euphoria of like, wow, that was a really well made movie. And it's been maybe 2 years since I saw Tenet and sort of felt that way as well. But with Oppenheimer, it was a bit different. And I think it's really just because so many people in the film did such a good job on screen. If I had to grade it, I I don't much care for like giving movies scores and everything, but I think that I would give it a solid 9 out of 10. Anyway, like I always tell people in my written reviews, go see it. Go see it for yourself and enjoy it, and tell your friends, take your friends to the movies, make sure they're quiet and they turn their cell phones off. Go see Oppenheimer. See it on the biggest screen you can find with the best sound, the best color. It's definitely worth it. Sound off in the comments if you feel differently about the movie. I love hearing people's different perspectives because oftentimes it opens my own. So try to let me know in the comments what you think about it when you go see the movie. I'd love to hear from you. Had Not Out. Thanks for watching my movie review. This is, I think, the first of its kind for me. So yeah, I just really appreciate you guys watching. See you next time.